Andrew, you are an undisputed, I suppose, icon of the commercial real estate sector for more years than either of us care to remember, I think. Tell me about the big trends that you've observed. How many years is it?
37, would you believe, in July, all with JLL, which is kind of almost unique, except in our office. We have a lot of people who've been around pretty much since I started.
Loyalty, retention, all those lovely things.
Yeah, but other family almost at this stage,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? But yeah, talk about change. I mean, when I would have started in 89, buildings really weren't air conditioned. We started with the IFSC, sort of 1990, 91, that period into 92. And they were the first sort of real fully functional, fully air-conditioned buildings that would have been around. There were some, don't get me wrong, but that started that whole trend of particularly overseas FDIs coming in with a particular set of requirements and demands, and our building stock at that time was not really prepared for that at all. But the extension of the IFSC as it went on, and then various other areas which we all know around town, you know, the developments up by Harcourt Street that came later, but everything that was built was suddenly 4-pipe fan coil units, and nobody had ever heard of a 4-pipe fan coil unit virtually.
Says the engineer. You're a civil engineer by background, are you?
No, mechanical.
Mechanical
engineer,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense. You're into fan coils.
There's nothing I like more than a good air conditioning system. Yeah.
Well, certainly today, we're at 27 degrees today.
Mm-hmm. Could do with it.
Need a bit of AC. So tell me about the sort of policy conditions that led, like, you know, we've talked about this before. When I was doing my intercert in 1986 or 7 or whatever it was, Ireland was in the geography book, in the social geography chapter. We were a third world country. It was us, Portugal and Greece. Right?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the things that conspired to arrive at us having the IFSC. If you see that as the kind of the birthplace of commercial real estate as we know it now.
I think it's a fair place to start from. I mean, there were a lot of things going on at the time. I think that the IFSC, the setting up of that, the investment that went in there, I mean, whether you liked him or don't like him, that was a Charlie Haughey, Fianna Fáil driven incentive. The tax schemes that were put around the occupiers down there really drove a lot of business down here and down there rather. And there was no rationale for financial services companies to come to Ireland at that point in time. They were all in London, they were in Paris, they were in Frankfurt. They were not on the north side of Dublin 1. Like, that was not a thing. But then they did start coming.
Yeah.
And then word of mouth got out, and obviously, genuinely, but back to the tax thing, that was obviously a huge driver for people.
So we had we had a political driver, and we had a money driver.
Yeah, and rent credit drivers. There was a load of stuff going on there that made it, you know, for incoming companies, it made it kind of a no-brainer not to go almost.
So we stole them out of London.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's almost like somebody knew that we'd join the EU, that we'd join the Eurozone, that the Brits wouldn't join the Eurozone. You know, it's almost like somebody knew that in a prescient way and backwards engineered it. I know that wasn't the case.
No, it wasn't, but we were a purely some manufacturing, agricultural-based country. We did not have professional services in the same way as we would know them now.
Yeah.
And, you know, the understanding that let's take your KPMGs, your Deloittes would have thousands of employees. They were big companies, but there weren't thousands and thousands of employees. We didn't have banks with 1,000 people. You know, there was no State Streets, there was no Cities, there was no JP Morgans or any of that. They were not here.
Yeah.
And they had no reason to be here.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they did have a reason to be here. And then
a money reason, lovely buildings.
And lovely buildings, yeah. And then once that trend had started, the developer body sort of went, okay, well, if we do that and keep making buildings like this and keep the financial incentives in play, will more come? And yes, they did. And, you know, we have to also give huge credit to the IDA, because even now they're not a big organisation by governmental standards. Like I could be wrong. I think there's still only about 400 to 500 people between the global people and the people who are based in Ireland. But what they have brought into this country is unbelievable. I mean, hundreds of thousands of jobs have been created, not only in Dublin. You and I are around the construction industry a long time. It used to be 100% Dublin-centric, but if you have a look at what the pharma sector in Cork, the med devices sectors, the tech sectors that have moved to Galway,
Cork,
Waterford, Limerick, Waterford, some in the Midlands, the likes of your Ericssons and whatnot in the Midlands, they did not exist. And there was no chance of them existing.
So there was a kind of a trickle effect out to the other counties from Dublin.
Well, again, further incentives provided for that. The idea were building the buildings.
Yeah.
So
and attracting
you could do speed to market. You were getting grants for the number of people you employed, and various other things. So again, the finances all stacked up. And the education system, I know everybody gives out about everything in this country, as we know, but our education system is outstanding, really. Like your average person here is better educated than most. And then we started to look at university courses that were specifically tailored, and now we had a workforce that were ready to go.
Yeah, I went to DCU, NIHE. It was.
It would have been NIHE Glasnevin.
Yeah, until '88, and then it became a university, DCU, and it was a technical university. So it was actually, even today, no criticism of Trinity, but even today, you go to Trinity, and unless you do kind of law or engineering, it's hard to get a job with some of the courses that you have. Whereas with DCU, you went in, you did your 4 years, and you went straight into a job. There was a thing called a mill grant, which I never participated in.
Yeah, no, that existed when I was there. I before you.
Yeah, there's a thing called a mill grant where you'd go and meet the corporates, and they would literally pull the graduates out of DCU. What you're basically saying here is, we excelled at developing brainware, and the foreign direct investment came here for it.
Correct. And once we could get them in the door,
we're
very good at selling as a race. Come on, you want to, and we bring them places and we do stuff. And I do think we kind of underestimate the Irish-American factor. You still see it today. 100%. Guys coming over. Yeah. They want to come to Ireland. They want to be in Ireland.
Yeah. They have Irish blood in them somewhere along the way.
So why not?
Yeah.
I mean, it's how the intels
we both speak a native English.
Yes, we do. And the time zones help.
Yeah.
The common language helps.
Yeah.
But
the shared cultural. I mean, we would share a lot of movies and cultural stuff like that.
Yeah. They really think they're Irish, and we absolutely play on it. So why would we not?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And we are quite American.
Yes.
We are quite.
Yeah. There's a lot of look, come on. How many Irish people are living in America? How many American people have Irish heritage?
Yeah.
Why would you If it was France, they'd be using that to their full advantage.
Exactly.
Why should we not?
Exactly.
And they had the money. They were prepared to come over. They weren't coming over when there was nothing there for them, because they're not idiots. They're not going to necessarily be the first movers either.
Yeah.
But once the infrastructure started to be put in place, and the systems were put in place, and they recognised that we really did have a highly educated workforce. We were becoming a modern economy, albeit that it went up and down like a yo-yo through the 80s, as you know. It was great year, terrible year, great year, terrible year. But that's the way it was, yeah.
Yeah.
But if we hadn't done any of that, we would not have ended up where we are now, in an economy that is flying still, that is actually in surplus.
Booking all the
who ever heard of surplus when we were starting work, or during most of our working careers?
Yeah. It was always deficit.
It was always deficit. It was always cost of borrowing. It was always this. It was always that. But back to where we started this. That was the start. That late 80s, early 90s piece was the foundation for everything that we have now, for sure.
It's a pity now we didn't have the infrastructure to go with it, but that's another day's work. And look, to be honest, we did get roads.
We definitely did. And And I think, look, we were going actually on a very solid path until '08.
Yeah.
And then, if you remember, we were building 40, 50, 60,000 houses a year. Now, whether we're all in the right place is an entirely different matter, whether they're the right quality, an entirely different matter, but we were building them.
Yes, they were getting built. Maybe because of the lack of regulation and quality.
Yes, yeah. But I mean, if you imagine doing any other industry where you stopped doing any form of investment for the bones of 10 years.
They just jammed on the brakes.
Yeah, because we didn't have a tosser. We were lucky to have survived as a country, and we kind of only just about did that by a monstrous loan from the EU, and the IMF.
Yeah.
If you stop doing that, how we're still having a conversation now about we haven't done this and we haven't done that when we literally stopped for 10 years.
Yes.
At a point when we were absolutely bombing along.
So all the investors, so there was a few things that led to it, I suppose. The local authorities no longer built houses themselves, and it was privatised.
Yep.
They lost all the skills they would have had in-house probably as a result of that.
Correct.
Ireland was no longer, because of the bond markets, it was no longer a sexy place to invest. So private funds didn't want to build houses here. And a lot of the smaller developers got out of the market as a result of this, and we didn't have the big developers to build at scale at the time.
But there was no capital.
There was no money. And there was also no people, because all the skills went to Australia.
Or some of them went back from where they had come.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the East Europeans who had done really very well went, okay, there's nothing here for us.
Yes, yes.
And they were the mobile workforce that we would have been in the 70s and 80s. They just went, well, we're going where the work is. So if there was no work in Ireland, they went to Germany, or they went to the UK, or they went wherever the work was, up to and including home.
Yeah.
We spent, obviously we're a commercial real estate company. We literally spent all of our time trying to work out with our clients what to do with buildings, how to sell them, how to let them, there was nothing going on. This was all hands to the pump, valuing stuff for banks, doing that. But in the world of constructive, forward-moving stuff, all of the intellectual capital was being used up trying to stay afloat.
Yeah.
There was no progress being made. It was, can you get from one end of the year to the other end of the year intact? And then you had the guys that we would have all been hanging around who suddenly went, right, we're off to Dubai, we're off to Saudi, we're off to Qatar, Oman, wherever they decided they were going.
I know loads of them.
Yeah.
They're all back now.
Well, yep, they are. But they weren't even here to help with that. Do you know what I mean? Because their immediate issue was,
I have a big mortgage.
I've got to put food on the table. Yeah, the kids still have to have shoes.
Yeah.
So they left. So you ended up with a very unusual set of circumstances where it was all hands to the pump. It was just keep afloat. It was try and make a profit if you can. But the strategy was not drown. It wasn't progress, expand, grow, accelerate. None of those words were in the lexicon at that point. And that was like that for a long time. It happened that actually, ironically, the fit-out world was doing relatively okay because rents were obviously going down. The American companies were still kind of growing amazingly after the first couple of years. And they were kind of, all of a sudden, we were uber competitive here. Low rents, decent buildings, some of them had to have a bit of, I'm not going to say retrofitting because it's not the right word, but a bit of putting them into the state they needed to be put into. But that market still moved. But buying buildings, okay, yes, if you had cash, and the big funds did, they were happy enough to come in and buy buildings at 30 cents on the euro. Why would you not? If you can afford to do it.
Because everybody knows recessions are cyclical. It's going to come back.
This was a bit more cyclical than your average Irish recession, to be fair, which tended to be sort of 2-year cycle things. This went on for solidly 6 until we sort of saw any reasonable form of recovery. But recover we did. And that's the resilience of the Irish people as well. We were the first of the the pigs country out of the gap. We became kind of the icons for how to knuckle down and get it done.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we did. The others were having, if you look at Portugal, they're still not in a great position. Greece absolutely isn't a great position.
Having an ideological crisis.
Well, they were having more a political crisis.
Yeah.
Actually, there were government changes to beat the band. There was more rowing about it, and almost the sort of the ostrich mentality of stick your head in the sand and somehow it'll all work out. We aren't like that as a country. We did not do that. We found a way to push through. We went, okay, we have to actually pay this back, and we had to get out of this as fast as we can, and we did.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I could sit and analyse exactly how that happened, but a lot of hard work, a lot of resilience, and a lot of both corporate and political will to make sure that it did happen.
And in the right place at the right time when the green shoots started to show then in 2013.
Yes.
Do you remember the first Fit Out Awards? 2013.
Crikey,
Was it 2012 or 2013?
Remember bits of it.
Yeah. I remember that was the phrase that was kind of echoing around the whatever the hotel is, the Burlow.
Yeah.
Green shoots, green shoots, green shoots. And everybody was so positive and upbeat, and it was green shoots.
As was. Yeah. I mean, it really was. As I said, we've been seeing some encouragement. Slightly before that, then it was very flat in like 2010, 11. And then it really did start to pick up again. If I recall correctly, and anyone's open to correct me if I'm wrong, the US economy had started to climb back out of the horror show that they'd been through as well, which all really helped. There was capital back in the market. The banks were able to borrow again. The government was able to borrow again at rates that weren't absolutely catastrophically high.
Yes.
Because they'd seen the progress we had been making. So
So there was a vision, there was a bit of strategy, there was somebody who had their finger on the various pulses.
Look, the government gets beaten up for everything.
Yeah.
Particularly all that crash stuff, the banks get beaten up, and are they at fault? Yeah, there's certainly fault there, there's no doubt about it. But if you have a look at what was happening across the world, the Irish banks weren't the first banks to go down the drain. There were much, much bigger banks failing all over the world. And ironically, bar the obvious one should remain nameless, the other banks have paid everything back.
Yeah.
Which is surprising.
Yeah.
I know nobody wants to hear that story, but it has, and it's put us back onto a much better footing. Banks are in better place from a capital perspective than they've ever been.
The governance.
They've been forced into it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get into that particular conversation. But if you don't have the important thing is if you don't have a stable banking infrastructure and a government that is stable and a bond rate that is stable, you have absolutely no chance of moving forward as an economy.
Because the investment won't come in.
It just won't come in. They look at you like you're back to being a third world country again. Yeah. And whereas there's too much risk in that.
Yeah. So we have tackled that, and we have provided stability, and even now in the VUCA world, what is it? Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Even now in the VUCA world, Ireland is maintaining stability and certainty.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, the investment is coming in. So from your perspective, if the money is starting to flow into the country again, we talked about the vision that Charlie Haughey might have had, and Garrett, and the lads back as far as Sean Lamass. So who's in charge of the vision now? Who's the person? Is there a visionary? Are there multiple visionaries? Is it planners? Is it architects? Is it developers?
It's quite the mixture.
Is it the Irish people?
I think we certainly, as a people, we have a view of what we want this to all look like. Absolutely, for sure. Have we got everything right at the moment? No. We know. We talk about the housing crisis all the time. It's the biggest single thing. Power infrastructure, all of that sort of stuff is going to be the problematic part.
The constraint.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we want our people to stay, if we want industry to continue to come, then same thing. We're not in 1987, 1988 again. We're in a different version of that. We have to provide a foundation from which to continue to move forward. And if that doesn't involve building the appropriate number of houses for people, and much more importantly, I think, making them affordable. You can build as many as you like. If nobody can buy them or rent them or whatever, that doesn't make any sense.
Yes. Yes.
And you're always going to have funds who want to go and build 1,000 apartments and charge whatever they want to charge, but they have to get rate of return on their investment. That's how it works. They're owned by pension funds, they're owned by other funds. You know, there has to be something to do there.
It has to be an attractive environment
Correct.
for them.
And they're also not building, you know, bed sits and Rathmines. You know, these are
Professional landlords.
top of the range
stuff.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't be building decent student accommodation, more affordable housing, putting it in the right places. Because if you, apart from anything else, if you want to build 50,000 houses a year, you got to house the 100,000 people it's going to take to build the 50,000 houses a year.
Yeah.
So that has to be done, and power, I think, is going to be the next big thing as well.
Yeah.
If you're talking about electrifying buildings for sustainability reasons, and we should be doing that, we should be defossil fueling our buildings and getting gas out of them, absolutely.
And our buses and our cars.
And our buses and our cars and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But with that comes a ginormous mind shift and change in how we generate our electricity
and the grid too.
And how to get it from point A to point B and into your house, because there's no point in saying this is all fabulous but the substation down the road can't deal with it. That doesn't work. So,
or we're using fossil fuels to generate it. So everybody
Correct.
thinks, oh, I'm driving an electric car, I'm being so sustainable, but 40% of the fuel that's generating electricity is fossil.
Correct. And that is the next part of that sustainability journey. But we should, just because that is a problem doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing the other part.
Yeah.
You know, building that infrastructure does take time.
Yeah. And again, it's going to create a further growth in the construction sector.
Correct.
You know, construction boom incoming. You heard it here first.
Construction boom incoming. I mean, look, if we look back even 2 or 3 years ago, I think we're talking about 35,000 completions or something this year in housing. And housing isn't my specialty, so let's not take all my figures for granted. But, you know, it's only a few years ago we were building 10, 12, 13,000 houses. That's so, you know, that has to progress, and actually ramping up by those numbers is
a feat in itself.
Oh, it's enormous.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, you're back to the same problem on all of the infrastructure stuff. The nearly 10 lost years where we could have been building wind farms or battery stations or upgrading infrastructure didn't happen. And then all of a sudden our population has grown. We're now knocking on for 5.25 million people. We were not 10 years ago. They all have to live somewhere. Everywhere you live has to have power to it. Buildings are being built, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's not that it's caught us by surprise, and I think it would be unfair to say that. I think what has happened is everybody knew what needed to be done, but there was no way of funding it. And now all of a sudden, it's all kind of arrived at the same time. So you're trying to do house building, infrastructure building, power grid building. I mean, they're not all the same human beings, but that still requires a workforce and a technical workforce.
Yeah.
You know, there's still architects, there's still engineers, there's still, you know, cost managers, project managers. All of those people are spread around all of these things.
Yeah.
So if the electrician that's supposed to be, you know, putting solar panels in your roof is currently wiring a house, you can't be doing both. Or she, for that matter, because there's a big shift in that direction too, which is great. But unless we're going to start looking at apprenticeships more and all of that sort of stuff, you know, if anybody wants, it's the great way to save your job from AI, because AI is not putting a solar panel on your roof.
No. Or unblocking your toilet, as they say.
Correct.
Yeah. It looks like it's moving. It is all moving in the right direction. I mean, there has been a freeing up of the movement of the capital. So the capital is now flowing in. We can borrow at a good rate because our credit rating is high as a country. We are addressing the planning. we are addressing the infrastructure issues as quickly as we can, but historically we haven't been quick. So it's not like there's a lack of vision. We have ideologically, I think it's very clear to us and to our policymakers and legislators and senior civil servants and the people who are standing up in the Dáil telling us about what they're doing. So we have ideologically, we have a vision, we know what we have to do. So what you're saying, Andrew, is that the constraints really are more about managers. We need delivery people.
It's delivery, yeah. Talking about it is very easy. Delivering it is not easy. And it's to say, like, there's so many processes involved in here. We can't end up in a situation where national infrastructure schemes get talked about for 20 years. Just apart from anything else, by the time you start them, they're now quadruple or 10 times what they should have cost when they actually started.
Yeah.
But the whole concept of government going, no, this is what we have to do, we are doing it, has to come into fruition.
Okay,
So I
love this. So basically, that girl, Sinead O'Sullivan, she was on Dave McWilliams' podcast, and she has a Substack account, and she spoke about how kind of, I'm sorry, Sinead, now I'm paraphrasing your words, but she kind of talks about us as being kind of infantilized by the fact that, you know, we were a colony for so long, and then the Catholic Church kind of ran a lot of our big services, our state services, like the health and the education, whatever. So she kind of talks about, it's an interesting theory, she talks about the idea that we're like children with pocket money. We have money now, but unfortunately we lack the skill, the knowledge, the expertise, and the track record of spending it. So if you look at Italy, Spain, France, the UK, they have centuries of experience of being rich and having money to spend. We're new money.
There's a little bit of that, but I do think there's also a bit of the if you brought a vox pop of people together and just went, should we have more wind energy? Yes. You know.
Yeah.
Should we have 100,000 more houses? Yes.
But NIMBY.
Should we have better road infrastructure? Should we have this? Should we have that? Absolutely. The answer is 100% yes.
Yes.
If I had to lop off the end of your back garden
Yes.
in order to do this, or you have to live within a kilometre of a giant wind farm.
Am I going to see it
Yeah.
from my office window?
Oh God, no. No, I don't want that.
What
Right?
about the fish?
Yeah.
What about the fish in the offshore wind?
The odd seagull. Yeah. Look, I'm not belittling that, because I think it's important we don't, because there is massive environmental stuff that does actually matter when you're doing these projects.
Yes.
But we just need to do it faster.
Yes.
Yes, we know all the stages that have to be done. Yeah, absolutely. But at some point in time, the greater good piece has to be
Greater than the individual.
Yeah. Yes.
More important than the individual.
I'm sorry, we're going to have to rehouse these animals,
Yeah.
or move them, or whatever needs to be done.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, I'm going to be, you know, attacked by environmentalists. That's not what I'm trying to say. There must be sites that work that don't have an inordinate environmental impact. There must be ways of doing this better.
There must be
But it has to be done.
There must be a way of weighing up, as you say, the greater good to our planet from using offshore wind against the needs of one species of fish. And you're talking to a vegetarian, like you're talking to somebody here who actually does care about the animals.
No, you're. That's why I'm very conscious when I'm saying these
Yeah,
things.
and
You're the most animal-friendly person I know.
But I also listen to people talking about the fish, you know, that are going to be affected by the offshore wind, and while they're sitting down to have their surf and turf.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. Well, that's just a very different argument. But yeah, I mean, look,
But it's about
the point being,
perspective, isn't it?
we can't debate the stuff forever.
Yeah.
As I say, we lost 10 years because we
Yes.
didn't have any money.
Okay.
Now we do have money. And you're kind of going, well, look, we have the money. We should be able to do this. But yet we still don't seem to be making
Moving.
the level of progress that everybody theoretically really wants to happen.
Yeah.
But that can't all be landed at government's doorstep.
No.
It can't all be their fault.
No.
I mean, they can't surely be all sitting in the dog going, do you know what, I'd love to be beaten up by the general public on an hourly basis over housing infrastructure and, schools and
Let's sit around
hospitals.
and talk about it for a little while.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I don't think that's a thing.
Yeah.
But getting it through the 400 levels of bureaucracy to actually go and build a thing, I mean, you see it with even things like flood defence. Everybody knows the river needs the flood defences. Why don't we just build them? We know we have the cash. It is sitting there.
Okay. So what you're saying is that maybe this all comes back to marketing. Maybe we need to invest a little bit of money in changing attitudes and culture in the members of the public. The layers of bureaucracy and regulation grew up as a reaction to the developer-led economy that we used to have.
Correct. But if you talk to the developers now, and I do quite regularly, as you know, though less the housing guys, but I did talk to a few of them last year just by chance, and they're chomping at the bit to build houses. But it is incredibly difficult for them to do so.
The path is uncertain and it's circuitous.
They're the ones putting up all the money. They're the ones who have to put
Take
all that in. They're the ones who are borrowing not at 2 or 3%. They're borrowing at like 8%, because it's short-term loan money to buy. Not even to probably have the site, okay, but they've had to buy the site.
Yeah.
They've had to then put the infrastructure in. They've had to do this. Put the planning in. Probably put the planning in again. Deal with another appeal. Do whatever it is. So that's a couple of years at least. Then you got to actually start building the houses. So you could be 4 or 5 years down the line and tens of millions potentially in the hole before you see a bean. That takes a very certain type of person to do. Not only do you have to have the capital or access to capital to do it, but most people aren't into that kind of level of risk. Now the government can do it because they don't have to take that risk. It's a different pot of cash. And you can see some of the local authorities are building houses, and that's fine. But again, they're not building enough of them either. But we need to get the real players properly into a room and understand where the blockers are. And that's when government have to go, right, well, if you're telling me that the blockers are A, B and C, we're going to go and unblock them and actively go and unblock them.
Be empowered to unblock them.
Either by empowering the state/semi-state bodies to do what they need to do, or by legislation to unlock the mechanism, because you can't have a situation where it takes 4 years to build 50 houses. That's just nuts. You don't catch up.
We're not creating a financial environment that's going to encourage developers.
But it's as much the regulatory side. It's the getting it over the line. It's that when they go and connect their houses, they've paid their ESB contributions, they've paid their water contributions, they've paid their foul connection contributions. Then they don't get them. Yeah. So it's like it all has to work as an ecosystem.
We always talk about the long lead items.
Well, that's it.
That needs to be applied for before we.
Well, I ordered them and then they didn't turn up.
Before we hire an architect, before we hire a planner.
but this is the point. I mean, but the sites that are being built on are already supposed to be fully service sites.
Right. Okay.
Because you can't just go and build a load of houses in a field. That's not how it works. They're zoned for a particular purpose. So
they should be plugged in.
So that if it's zoned for this, then as soon as you put your application in, then the application should be work with all of the other bits so that you can actually occupy in an appropriate period.
Is a pinch point. Gas Networks Ireland is a pinch point.
Yeah, and it's not all of them, obviously. Look, I mean, these organisations are doing a lot themselves, but anecdotally, that's the sort of thing that is stopping things from moving as fast as they They should be moving.
Well, let's get back into your wheelhouse, which is commercial.
Correct.
Right. I work with a lot of, contractors and subcontractors. A lot of them are M&E subcontractors, and also fit-out contractors and M&E consultants. Mm-hmm. And the big talking point over the last couple of years has been ESG and retrofit, right? Mm-hmm. We've been talking about this for a couple of years. Tell me about this. So the building stock down in the IFSC, what's going to happen to that? It's no longer probably achieving the building performance metrics that the tenants coming in from America want. So what's happening?
Well, you've a number of things. One, those buildings are from, as we know, like some of them are the late 90s, early 90s to late 90s, early 2000s. Then there's the later blocks that are sort of 04, 5, 6, those ones. Everybody goes, it's only 2006. It's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah.
How did
that happen?
Apparently the clock keeps turning, the earth goes around the sun and all that kind of carry on, right? So those buildings are, by CIBSE standards, plant is effectively obsolete. You actually have to start looking at them. Realistically, you're not in wrecking ball status because, in fairness to the planners and, environmentally, that's not what we should be doing.
Embodied carbon.
Yes. Yeah, look, if you knock it down, what are you doing with everything you took out? Does everything have to be scrapped? Yeah. Absolutely not. These are solid buildings. They were well built. There's no reason to take them down. They actually have reasonable floor to ceiling heights, most of them. So we're now looking at a full retrofit situation, right? We've been doing some work around this we've a retrofitting team in the UK. We've obviously a lot of specialists even within our own office. It can be done. It is not cheap. But a couple of things are going to happen. One, if you don't do it, your building is going to start losing its value, right? So that's the first problem. Your 50 million euro building will not be worth 50 million euro because if I try and sell it to you, you're going to go, well, I'm going to have to put 10 million into it, so I'm going to give you 40 million, right? So it's as simple as that. So that's what the market will dictate, that, and valuation standards will dictate that. So that's your first kind of driver for I better do something about this. Back to our friends, the FDIs and all of that. It has been difficult to get people to come back and work in offices, though I'm delighted to say that trend is very much, back to people coming to the office at least part of the time. They're not going to bring them to terrible buildings with terrible air conditioning systems. So if you want to market to those people, then the building has to be of an appropriate standard. Okay.
And it's not just air conditioning. Sure, it isn't. It's air conditioning. No. It's the facade. No. It's daylight. It's biophilia. Are they, is it of an appropriate LEED standard? Does it have welfare facilities? Does it have enough bike parking? Does it have a gym? Does it have showers? Does it have other welfare facilities or concierge services or whatever the heck it needs to be, right? Mm. They want to have, and by them I mean the occupiers, want to have buildings that will attract their staff to come into the office and want to stay in the office. I mean, that's what Google has done for decades. They've built a village inside their office building, so once you go in, you've no need to come back out again. You can be fed there, you can get your dry cleaning done, you can go to the gym, you can go to the pool, you can do whatever you want. Now, we're not talking about doing that because developers don't work that way, and these are multi-tenanted buildings, but you can see it now in buildings that these are now no longer negotiable options. This is what, these are tick boxes for people. This is the bar. Yeah, correct. So if you're back to your, early 2000s building that has none of these facilities, nobody's not even looking at them, right? The other bit, and just going back more to the building itself. Yeah.
Even if you didn't have an ESG problem and a devaluing problem, you have a problem that your plant is expired. Like, you're always going to have to do something with it after 20 years. All 20-year-old buildings, when you got 1980s buildings to 2000, they had to be retrofitted. So we shouldn't be looking at it and saying this is a problem of a new ESG sustainability thing. It's not. This is just a life cycle PPM. Of your building thing. Yeah, like at some point in time, you know, if you even look at your own house, you're going to have to change the windows. You're going to
So
have
true.
to do, you know, the
We
cooker's
expect the plant
exploded.
to truck along
Yeah, correct.
until it breaks.
Yeah.
And then it's usually Christmas Eve.
Yeah, if you're sitting there looking at twin flex wiring and a fuse board with the old, you know, ceramic fuses in it, it's probably trying to upgrade your fuse boards. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're going to have to do it at some point. Well, it's no different in commercial.
Yeah.
So you've got the fact that the plant is already expired. You have an ESG obligation to bring that building up to speed, and you've got the problematic part is the money you now need to invest. You're looking at a building that doesn't have the same value as it is. It's all absolutely fine if you bought the building for 20, it's now worth 50. Okay, it's going to be 40. You still have 20 million of equity in it notionally, right?
Yes.
You have some way of doing it, but if you bought it and you don't have that, it's not an easy sell. Even though it's like, again, back to nobody's stupid about it. They understand it, but they don't want to necessarily do it.
Yeah. And it's very hard to put a number on the retrofit with any certainty. So the person who's buying it is going to maybe buy something that's already been retrofitted.
Or there are a certain bracket of you know, developers who absolutely want those buildings and will come in and
that's their niche.
will do it themselves. This is a niche market for them.
Yeah.
The big funds, will they all buy them? And I'm talking about the international funds. A lot of them can't, because actually they've got funds that are in GRESB pots, for example, and you can't bring a crappy, excuse my language, building into that because it devalues all the rest of them. Do you know what I mean? So
give me 2 sentences on GRESB.
GRESB are basically the global collector of data, basically. So, you know, they're the ones who monitor the performance of the funds from an ESG and energy point of view. That's literally what they do, right? So you're expecting to see improvements in performance. That's the whole point of this, that you find a baseline, and that's where my sustainability colleagues come in. If you don't know where you are, you won't know where you're going.
What gets measured gets managed.
Correct. And actually, really importantly, like, sometimes you go, well, this is going to need a deep retrofit. And actually, when you actually look at it in proper detail, to get to the level you need to get to fall into a bracket of being a proper sustainable building, which I would say is sort of B2 upwards, doesn't necessarily mean ripping every single thing out of the building and starting again. It does not mean that.
Yeah.
Now, you still got to manage how you will do even small retrofitting projects in semi or fully occupied buildings. That is a challenge, but it's manageable and it's doable.
It requires a certain type of fit out contractor, Andrew.
It does, and a tenant liaison person. So you may get your old job back if you're not careful. No, it's really that sort of startup based principle. Understand what you have, understand the steps that it needs to get you to where you need to be. Then you can price it. Then if you want to sell it, at least you're selling it to somebody going, this is the pathway you will equally need to follow to get there. So you don't have that argument. You go, okay, we found the pathway to get you from D1 to B1 or A3, right? And really, I don't like the BER system, actually. It's probably better to talk about watts per square metre, but I'm not going to bore everybody with that. But that's actually the proper, true measure of actual sustainability, is energy usage per metre squared, right? So you decide what you need to do to get to that level, and that has a number associated with it and a degree of difficulty associated with doing it. And either you do it, or you're not ending up in a chipping discussion with somebody coming to buy your building going, well, I think it's 10 million and I think it's 2. Well, actually, the actual number, if you do all the investigation, is 3.72.
Spoken like an engineer.
Well, spoken like someone who's stuck
Accurate
in the middle
data.
Well, accurate data is everything.
It's everything.
Because otherwise you're just in a haggling competition, and
He said,
worse.
she said. Yeah.
Well, but it's almost worse than that, because, you know, there's no facts.
Yeah.
If you don't have facts, you're just literally talking
Waffle.
Yeah, well, you might as well literally just be haggling for a car in a car showroom, right?
Yeah.
That's not what we want to do
notional.
here. It is notional,
Yeah.
but we have the people in this country to do it.
Yeah.
But again, it's back to the same conversation. The people who are out doing all of the things we've talked about on this podcast are all the same people. We don't have 100 firms that are only doing residential and 100 firms only doing infrastructure and 100 firms doing commercial and another gansy load of them doing data centres, right? So we need people. We actually need people to do all of this because, now, the one thing I would say is that we're not really building base build offices at the minute. There was no obvious requirement for them. There's a lot of turnaround. So a lot of the guys who would have been doing those sort of out of the ground big projects will now start to become very focused on this retrofitting piece because, again, where are you going to build these office buildings? There's always going to be a market for new office buildings. Don't get me wrong, there absolutely will be. But we're going to end up having to split our time between retrofitting the building stock that we have and building the new stuff wherever that may need to be built. So hopefully with enough people, but
what you're saying is we are going to be building new office stock.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. The trends are predicting that we will need more office stock. We will also be retrofitting office stock. And what you're saying is the pinch point is really going to be the managers, back to the managers again.
yeah, I mean, look, if you look at your iPuts and your Irish Lifes and those sort of things, yep, they are building some new buildings. There's no doubt about that, and have been. But equally, if you have a look at like North Wall Quay and those sort of things, so you might be ripping a building back to its frame and retrofitting it and putting a new facade on it and doing all of that. Our building, for example, we've done the best we can with what we have in a very restricted site.
Yeah.
But it's a whole lot better than it was.
Yeah.
That's for absolute sure.
And all the tenants in there.
And all the tenants are still in there, and the building is filling up again. Thank you very much. And it has the facilities, etc., etc., etc. And it's in a good location. And let's not never forget location, because it is still a primary driver for stuff. So, are you better off retrofitting buildings in locations that we know are established?
Beside the Lewis.
Yeah, as opposed to building them where people don't necessarily want to go.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, that makes perfect sense. But what we're also looking at doing is, and there is payback from a pure kind of red book valuation perspective on this, if you can kind of take your 100,000 square foot building and you have to put whatever you have to put in to retrofit it, right? But you can add 10 or 15,000 square foot to it, right? The adding the 10 or 15,000 square foot to the building really doesn't cost a giant amount more in the context of what you're already in the middle of doing, but it does add a lot to value. And that's one way of part funding what you're talking about. So if you take one of your IFSC buildings, but you could put another penthouse floor on it, which is super duper, and you're going to get your 70, 80 quid a foot for it, that pays a chunk of the other stuff. Because the big glass box you had to put in the top doesn't cost the capital you're getting back in value for building it, right?
And
that's the way we have to look at these things.
Yeah, and you can do that course while you're doing the retrofit, the plant,
correct,
the facade,
the
pipes and wires.
Yes, you're doing all of that because you're going to have to replace
while
the plant.
You have the mucky boots
so the plant
on
might
site.
now have to move from where it currently is, because that's where you're now going to put your penthouse, up onto the top. You put in your heat pumps, you put in whatever, So it takes a bit of thought and a bit of time and a bit of imagination to work that out.
Bit of vision.
Yeah, correct. And that's where we need the architects, the developers, obviously, the funds to invest a bit of time and money in proper feasibility and properly understanding what it is that they're trying to do, which is, as I say, we already have people doing that. We need to do more of it.
The reason we're here is FDI, right? There's obviously a whole other discussion about indigenous companies and creating an environment where Irish companies will need gorgeous office buildings. But at the moment, it's going to be all about the FDI. We started off talking about financial services and how they first came to the IFSC. Now we're talking about tech companies, lawyers, accountants, professional services firms. We know those Facebooks and Googles and LinkedIns and Twitters. I mean, we have been here, we have observed them coming and staying and growing.
Correct.
They were probably a huge part of our careers, in our industry.
Absolutely. They 100% were. Like when Google came, well, actually, probably back before when Microsoft came.
Yes, and Intel.
Out in Sandyford, and then Intel started building the first fab, and everyone was looking at going, sorry, you're spending like $10 billion or whatever it was to build a factory. People were like glazed over with the numbers. They were absolutely astronomical.
Yeah.
But
they're still here.
They're still here.
Yes. So the question for you is, are we resilient? Is that FDI money and investment, is it resilient? Are we providing what they need? What do they need from us now, and how can we give it to them?
They will not move into second-class stock. They won't. They might if they have subcontracted bits of their business where they're happy to put those people into, and I don't want to say second-class stock because they don't even really want to do that, but there will be a level down. But they want prime building stock. They want to have the best of the best for their staff. That's how they attract people. Remember, they're all fighting for the same brain power as well. Like, no different than our industry. All of the contracting firms are fighting for the same subcontractors, for the same contractors, for the same professional teams. Like there's a finite resource there of intellectual capital, should we call it that? Because I don't like human capital. It sounds like we're selling people, and it's not right. But there's a finite amount of that around, right? So, do they stay if you continue to provide the right environment? Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's a huge political element to this as well. The tax harmonisation piece, and we're going to have to just deal with the 15%. That doesn't appear to have scared the hell out of everybody. We are and still have a workforce that is highly educated. The tax situation is solid. Everybody now knows what it is, whether we like the slight increase or don't. We know what it is. It's stable. The economy is generally stable.
We're native English speakers.
We're native English speakers.
In the EU.
Correct.
In the Eurozone.
I was going to say exactly that. The only naturally English-speaking country in the Eurozone. And again, the time difference thing, and I know people kind of poo-poo it a little bit, but even with the West Coast, our 4 o'clock in the afternoon is their 8 o'clock in the morning. But if you're 2 hours further east of us, now you're having to run a different shift. Yeah. Effectively.
Yeah.
You've almost no overlap.
Yeah.
Where actually, it kind of works.
Yeah.
You can come in a little bit later in the morning, stay a little bit later in the evening. You have 3, 4, if you're East Coast, you have 5 or 6 hours of overlap if you're prepared to stay on a little bit in the evening, which works for them.
Yeah.
They can then work the rest of their day, send stuff back. You're almost picking it back up again the following morning.
You have stuff done by the time they come
online. You're almost looking like a 16-hour day.
Nice.
It actually really works.
Yeah.
And our work ethic is high. It really is. Do you know what I mean? And we do get stuff done. And when we say yes, we generally mean yes. When we say that can't be done, they actually listen. Do you know what I mean? There's no kind of saying yes when you mean no or no when you mean yes. We do produce, and the quality that we produce is good. And because we now have, particularly in kind of the pharma world and that sort of stuff, like, because we build so much of them and so many of them, and you see it with the data centre guys as well, not only the data centres here, but they're now across Europe.
Yeah. They're exporting
we have a
that
model.
know-how.
There's a model of how to do these things that not everybody has.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't suddenly decide, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start building oil refineries tomorrow. Are you? Okay. Well, I'm telling you, there's not a huge number of people in the world who actually know how to do that properly.
Yeah, it's IP.
And that's
it's
what they do.
approach.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we have that.
Right. Obviously, every fit-out contractor and M&E contractor and, in Ireland would love to meet Andrew McCracken and be like, how do I retrofit these offices, Andrew? Can you put me on your tender list to fit out these offices? What are you looking for from these contractors?
We might just take one little step back. What I'm actually looking for is a design team that fully understand that this has to be a commercial venture, right? You can't suddenly spend 20 million quid in a building that has a return of 10. That's not going to work, right? No one's buying that. It may look absolutely fabulous, but it actually has to work, right? It has to work financially. It has to work in the context of, you cannot go round to all of your buildings and go, right, everybody out for 3 years. We're going to come in and rip your building apart. They have leases. They have rights. This has to be done in a strategic manner. So what we're looking for is strategic partners from a design point of view, who will come in and understand that this is a live, evolving building.
So you need your architect, your planner, your consulting M&E engineer, you
fire, health and safety, DAC,
you need
sustainability.
All these guys to...
Yeah.
I like the word partner. So what you're looking for is somebody who's aligned with you shoulder to shoulder, who understands the commercial realities of this situation.
Correct. Yeah.
That's
and
the unifying
it is a unifying thing,
Yeah.
all off a base of having done all the hard groundwork in knowing what it is you actually need to do.
Collecting the data.
And I know it sounds terribly boring, but it isn't terribly boring. It's the fundamental building block of everything that we do. If you're running 120 watts a square metre when you need to be at 55, that's a big leap. If you're actually running at 65 and you want to get to 55, maybe it's not such a big leap at all.
Yeah.
So if you know what that is, and then you have people who understand what that data means and can translate that into a step-by-step
plan.
Not quite, Enid Blyton version of the thing, but
Fisher Price.
Yeah, Fisher Price, yeah. Version of how to do it, right?
Yeah. In a way that everybody understands.
Everybody understands. These are the building blocks that you can talk to your tenants and they will buy into it.
Yes.
And go, this is what you're going to get out of this.
Yeah.
You're going to have to take a wee bit of pain along the way. This is not like it's omelets and egg breaking, but yeah.
I love this. So what you're saying here is we have to get out of our engineering speak and get out of our construction speak and get out of our architectural speak and speak in common plain language that tenants will understand and that building owners will understand.
The funders will understand, the developers understand, the new tenants coming in will understand.
This is marketing.
Yeah, this is marketing.
It's communication.
And then to your original question, what do you need out of the contractors?
Yeah.
The same. We need them to come in and also partner, and I do mean that because they have a huge part to play in, we can all put this on paper and they go, well, that's fabulous, lads, but there's no possible way of building that.
Constructability.
Yeah. How are you going to actually build it? How are you going to procure it? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? They need to be involved early in the process because otherwise you spend God knows how long designing a thing. You have it all the way, it all looks absolutely perfect, and then you go out to the builder and he goes,
I just walked the site.
Yeah.
That is not going.
There's nowhere to put a crane. I can't do this. Do you know what I mean?
Those as-built drawings are fiction.
Yeah, but or literally, how are we physically going to manage to do this?
Yeah.
Because construction is not quiet. It's not clean. And I say that in the context of the modern large building contractor. They're unbelievable people. Their sites are absolutely pristine in comparison to what you would have seen 30 years ago.
Yeah, housekeeping.
But that still doesn't mean that there is not noise and dust
Drilling.
and stuff that has to go on. So how are you going to build it? And maybe they have a better way. Maybe I've kind of put them in the bracket of being problematic and saying, how are we going to build it? Actually, they might turn around and go, well, I see what you're trying to do. Would you not do this?
And that's what you want from them.
Or I found a product that you don't know about, and actually we can
do all that off-site.
Correct.
In a factory.
Oh yeah, there's a modular version of that.
Yeah.
We can literally just go and plonk that in the roof.
And that's the knowledge you want from them.
Correct. And that's the bit where we want everybody together going, that's an easier way of doing it. Even if it costs a wee bit more from a construction point of view, if you could knock 6 months off the build.
Time is money.
Well, now you're renting it 6 months earlier.
Yeah.
Its value is derived 6 months earlier. That could be worth £1 million of something, whatever that might be, in order to just do it. Or maybe it's just the lack of pain.
the lack
maybe
of
it's
pain,
worth
keeping your
it.
tenant happy, that you don't get
Yeah,
into a legal wrangle about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this has to be done in a coordinated fashion, where you're not just bringing in one person at a time, because every time you bring in another person, there's another thought process, and you get them all together and put them all together.
The charrette, as they call it in Lead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you do that, then you have a half chance of ending up with a product that actually works, that is viable, that has a return on investment, and can actually be built.